You are listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys, for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
We finally done it. A monumental episode. This is episode 450 of the Rouge Radio podcast, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. My name is Robert Dalton, and joining me, as always, Tony Allen. Tony, how's it going, my man?
Very good, very good. Happy Labor Day to you.
Yeah, it's just we got a great show. Hopefully, the one and only Kevin Glenn will be with us. Hopefully, in a few minutes, he'll be on. Well, I should say 10 to 15 minutes. A great football weekend, was it not? You caught 3 out of the 4 Labor Day games.
I did, and they were all on the radio. Nice old time way of picking up the Labor Day classics. I missed the first one altogether because the hotel I'm at, of course, I'm at a hotel this week. I can't do twice from the same location. So the hotel I'm at doesn't subscribe to all the TSNs. So while the Ottawa-Montreal game was playing, all I had access to was the U.S. Open tennis. So after wanting to smash my TV and change hotels, I guess I could have gone to a restaurant and watched it. But the other 3, I was at work and had to listen to them on the radio and while I drove back to the hotel from site. But, I mean, at least I got to get an idea of how they went. There was some pretty stale football this weekend, I'm not going to lie, at least from a listening standpoint. Hopefully, visually, it was more appealing, though.
The Ryder Bomber game seemed to be a little bit entertaining. I think I can't remember who said it was on Twitter earlier today. It's like, well, if you want a defensive battle, the Riders Bombers game. If you just want to watch a game full of lack of offense, that Tiger Cat Argo game was the way to go. I'm curious. You got. I'm assuming you caught the Winnipeg, because we're talking off air. You got the Winnipeg feed. So
yeah, I did. I listened to that one.
Was it the Argo or Tiger Cat feed?
I listened to the Argo's broadcast.
And for the Calgary and Edmonton game?
No emotion. I'll tell you right now, for the listening to the Argo's broadcast, all due respect to whoever does that broadcast, oh boy, if anyone other than the Argos do something, it is the most driest, blandest play-by-play I've ever heard. Like, I'm probably not in a position to criticize that crew, but it was seriously just like, and he's over the center. There's the snap. Check some reads. He goes downfield. That one's complete. And now they'll just read. Like, it was just like horrible. Unless the Argos did something, then it was so much energy. So,
well, in his defense, Hamilton's offense was boring a lot of people to sleep. So.
Yeah. I will say, whoever does color for the Bombers sounds just like that guy that is Deadpool's friend in the Deadpool movies. What's that actor's name?
I don't know, but we've had him on our show. That's Doug Brown.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I never remember him sounding like that before. I never really listened for names. Hell, I even got Derek Taylor's name wrong when I texted you. So how intelligent. Well, then Doug Brown sounds exactly like the buddy's friend from the bar in Deadpool. I want to say TJ Miller, but he plays for the Vancouver Canucks. I am just horrible with now.
Is that's JT Miller, right? And then there's TJ Miller. Yeah, there's 2. Yeah, there's TJ Miller and then there's JT Miller.
Yeah,
JT Miller, JT Miller is the one that plays for the Canucks.
Okay.
TJ Miller is the guy who, as of like 3 years ago, got Me Too'd.
Got you what?
He got Me Too'd. He was one of the, I guess once the Me Too movement came out, he was, I think he was one of the first celebrities that was kind of like caught in the Me Too. I shouldn't say Me Too, but he was caught in it. I mean, obviously he did something, but it was one of the first. But again, that's a discussion for a different podcast.
Yeah.
That's not
TJ Miller. Anyways, Doug Brown that broadcast sounded like TJ Miller. There, that's what I picked up there. And then obviously I listened to QR77 for the Stampeders for the most unbiased, comprehensive play-by-play in the. If you want it, honest, neutral broadcast, you've listened to it. No one gives you a more unbiased, subjective view of a football game like the crew at QR77.
I know what you're doing.
Yeah. What am I doing? I'm just
I know that like broadcasters they broadcast for their market. I listen to them. I don't know if it was the same guy because I know we've had Mark Stevens on the show and Greg Patterson.
Yeah.
But I listened to their post game show one time and man, like if you thought and I don't know if it was just one show. I only paid attention to it because it was a post game show of the Bombers. But you thought Rider fans created conspiracy theories. That one show, it was bad, and will likely just because of that one comment where Mark is never going to come on the show again.
There you go.
Here is what's trending in the CFL this week as we go live to the badass music. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers become the first team in 2022 to clinch the postseason after a 20-18 win over the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Some big trades in the CFL, the Montreal Alouettes, and all quarterback controversy by trading Vernon Adams Jr. to BC for a first-round pick in 2023. They weren't done. They then send Avery Ellis and a third to the Edmonton Elks for Thomas Costigan and Nephi's Lions. The Elks weren't done. They also traded David Beard and a conditional pick to Hamilton for Jesse Gibbon and a second-round pick. That is what's trending in the CFL this week. Obviously, nothing else because, well, it was Labor Day game, and a lot of people are just getting their barbecue on. Let's talk about that Vernon Adams trade because it just seems bad that the Montreal Alouettes are now tying their season to Trevor Harris.
What a horrible move. I don't even know how to describe that. Like, that's just a horrible move by Montreal. I would love to know what the logic is behind that. Like, I don't even know how you make an argument to believe that Trevor Harris is a better option than Vernon Adams Jr. Like, I don't even believe you can go and say, well, Vernon Adams Jr. didn't take us anywhere. And it's like, where did Trevor Harris take literally anybody? Like, nowhere. No. I mean, he took a couple Grey Cups, but let's be honest, Henry Burris took them to the first Grey Cup because Trevor Harris couldn't follow it up. And the second Grey Cup, okay, he got them there. There's no argument, and still couldn't succeed. And then he got his big fat check because everyone bought in to the Trevor Harris smoke and mirrors, or not the hype, the biggest bust hype ever. And then he went to Edmonton and did literally nothing there. And you can argue that Vernon Adams wasn't the guy in Montreal, but the counter argument to that, or the counterpoint to that, is not Trevor Harris. You could have got a lot of people before Trevor Harris. But honestly, BC's the smart one in the deal because they didn't take Trevor Harris, which I don't know how Montreal can't fleece BC because they're desperate. And you gave them the better of your two quarterbacks. So unless Vernon Adams was vocal there that we're not aware of and wanted out because whatever reason he felt he would have had to compete with Trevor Harris, unless Vernon Adams was part of the move to get him out of Montreal, I just don't even know how you rationalize going with Trevor Harris over Vernon Adams Jr.
You know what? To be honest with you, see, I could go either way with it because you look back in 2021 and the first game this year. I mean, it's not like Vernon Adams was lighting it up. You know, you could argue that there's injuries and whatnot, but then you go to Trevor Harris, who wasn't lighting it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand. See, from the Montreal standpoint, Montreal gets a draft pick, a first-round draft pick, which is probably as much as you can probably get. It's if you're thinking for next year, I'm thinking 2023 right now.
Okay.
And who's going to what's your plan B? Because if Trevor Harris is going to be your starter in 2023, you've already effed up.
Mm-hmm.
If you told me this is win now, and this is Trevor Harris, that you trust Trevor Harris, okay, I don't believe you, I don't agree with you, but I get it. But you're telling me that you get rid of Vernon Adams for a draft pick, you're going with Trevor Harris for what's your plan for next year?
Mm-hmm.
Who's available free? Obviously, with 1-year contracts, there's got to be a lot of might be a lot of available. Jeremiah Mazzuli's not going to be available. Dane Evans, maybe. If you could pry, I don't know, Tony Pipkin out of BC. Maybe Cody Fajardo out of Saskatchewan. I don't know. I mean, there's just but it was just completely asinine that you're hitching your season to Trevor Harris, and now you don't have any, your cupboards are bare for a key position. Because I tell you what, Trevor Harris, I don't know how old, I think it was 36 he's going to be next year, 37. He's not going to be a starter, and I highly doubt that he wants to be a backup at that age. Next year.
And my biggest beef with this one too is, thanks to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, you're probably a playoff team. I don't think, and that's what really floors me is you kind of are about 75% of the way into the postseason right now. I haven't seen anyone that tells you they see potential for the Tigers making a run now that it's Labor Day weekend. I think they're lying. They're flat out lying. That is not a faith that they'll do it. That's not a belief that they'll do it. That's not a prediction. That's just like you throwing something against the wall and hoping it'll stick, and then you'll look like a genius when it's done. Because there's nothing that indicates the Tiger Cats have anything in their repertoire, their bag of tricks, that will make this last run to the postseason any better. So the Tiger Cats are handing you a playoff spot, and you pick the quarterback that, I don't know. I don't want to say can't prove it, because Vernon Adams, I guess, essentially hasn't proved it either. But I'm sorry, just side by side, if you're telling me you can have Vernon Adams or Trevor Harris because it looks like you're going to be in the playoffs, and to think of someone just looking at Trevor Harris and thinking, oh yeah, that is what I want to go to the Grey Cup with, Trevor Harris over Vernon. I don't see it, because honestly, he didn't get there when Calgary beat them, or when they beat Calgary the first year, and he got them there, and he did not look like a great quarterback when it was all on him to get them to beginning to end. So a door opened for you, and then you just politely said no thank you and closed the door again.
I think that's like a perfect way to say it. It's like, yeah, what are you doing? Toronto didn't impress me in the game against Hamilton today.
No.
It was a third, credit to Hamilton to do what they tried or what they wanted to do, and they just failed just because they just don't have the defense available to stop at key times, and they have a third string quarterback who looked like a third string quarterback today when he started. Like we could wish and want guys like Jamie Newman to perform eloquently in a Labor Day game. The first quarter did okay. It looked like he could just deal with the pressure, and then it just went downhill from there. And you just said it, like Hamilton was like doing it. Like Hamilton's in last place in the East right now, by virtue of having more losses than the Ottawa Red Blacks. Like that tells you how either crazy good Ottawa's turned it around, or how bad Hamilton it is. And you know what? Ottawa's still in line. I got to say, Toronto has not impressed me. Ottawa's still in line for first in the East, as surprising as it is. And before, because we're still waiting for Kevin Glenn to come in. Hopefully, it'll be here pretty soon. If you're watching this live, you notice the ticker SIA.com I say forward slash, but you've corrected me before, /Rouge. It's our own personal website to go to with our good sponsors, our good affiliate partners at Sports Interaction. Your first deposit will be matched 100% up to $500. However, just got an email from them. If you are betting on NFL for the month of September, your first deposit will be matched up to $1,000. That is so obviously in parlay with the NFL starting this week, it is it's good to go, man. You can make a lot of money. And again, you can go through our website, SIA.com/Rouge, and you're not limited to CFL gambling. There's hockey, there will be hockey, there's baseball, basketball, college football, I believe, and as well as the NFL. So for the month of September, go ahead and get your gaming on, get your betting on. This week, I decided to put a couple of bucks on Saskatchewan covering the spread, which I won. I had Toronto covering the spread, which I won. Those damn Elks. I had, and it's crazy because last week on the show I said Calgary it wasn't going to be close. I had them like 40-13 or something like that, something ridiculous. And at first it was like, oh my God, this is going to happen. And then Taylor Cornelius just happened to be just making those proper plays for Edmonton. And defensively, they were making the key stops against Jake Mayer, and and then he had this burst in the second half, and then all of a sudden Taylor Cornelius goes Zach Collaros and finds, I believe it was Mitchell in the end zone. Did you think that Edmonton was going to come back and win that one? Was it ever in the corner of your mind?
I didn't, even when, because there was that touchdown, that was the one on the third down gamble, right?
Yeah.
Even when he hit that, I'm like, nah, I don't like that it happened, but I didn't like that. I didn't feel like it was a big threat to happen. And then then it kind of fell apart for them. I mean, Paredes missed that field goal, which sucked. I don't know how that broke down. I haven't seen a lot of highlights. But even then, with the single point, I'm like, okay, a 2-point conversion ties it. But I'm like, I honestly don't even trust the Elks to do that much. Like, I really just have just lack of faith in the Elks to be able to do anything, that even when they were threatening, it was like, when the play broke up or the play failed, it was like, phew, it's over. It was like, I don't really think they were going to pull it off anyways. And it was funny because I was listening to the Stampeders pregame show, and they made a pretty good point, to be honest with you. Kind of lost my phone here. He made a pretty good point. It's like, Chris Jones has made so many changes to that football team that there's almost the aura, if you mess up, you're done and you're out. And he just changes the lineup so frequently. And his big point before the football game was all you've got to do is make a couple guys miss a play or look bad. And the first thing you're going to think is Chris Jones pulling me this. Like, this is my last game. Jones is going to pull me because he's got such a quick trigger finger. Just pull them out, pull guys out. Something like 10 different roster changes for 10 different games. And like, it was just like massive overhauls. And I think, I didn't see the game, but it sounded kind of like Edmonton when they try and get some momentum, but there was a bad play, then they just collapsed again. Because they could have had Calgary a lot more against the ropes in that last 8 minutes than maybe there should have been. But even when Logan fumbled a punt return, from what it sounded like, there was also the fumble from Carey that ended up they didn't even challenge or whatever. But there were a lot. It sounded like mistakes from Edmonton in crucial parts of the games that they couldn't overcome, which just made me think of what they had mentioned in that pregame show about how if you're an Elk, you must just think, if I screw up once, Chris Jones is going to bench me. He's going to stick somebody else in there right away, opposed to other teams that will just continue going to that guy if things are going rough.
So, okay. So you mentioned that, screwing up in front of Chris Jones. I got to ask you.
Okay.
Chris Jones was in Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
Does he cut A, Garrett Marino, or B, Duke Williams? Because I got to tell you, Duke Williams, what the heck are you doing, Duke? Like, he's not playing, and he's still costing the Riders. Yeah. What are you doing, Duke? You've got to be some special type of bad, or selfish, or stupid to, hey, we gained a first down, or close to a first down, but I'm going to go say something to the opposing player on the bench and move our team and stop momentum, because who knows what would happen after that. The Riders could have converted. They could have ran it, maybe kicked a field goal, and we're talking about the Riders winning instead. Yeah. But I have a feeling that if Chris Jones was still coach of the Riders, I think he's gone. I think they might have. I think they're just getting healthy. They have a plethora amount of receivers that are able. I think they just cut ties with them if Chris Jones. But for whatever reason, Craig Dickinson and Saskatchewan are just like, they're okay with this kind of stuff. They're just ready to enable it.
Yeah, I think Chris Jones would have kept them if they were getting positive results. I think winning football games is what's most important. Doesn't matter what kind of human being you are, winning football games is most important. And I don't think that's just the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I'm thinking there's several teams in the Canadian Football League that would be comfortably fine with horrible people staying in the lineup if they can play football. And Duron Carter is proof that if Chris Jones likes you, you're going to have a job in the Canadian Football League. And so that's why I think if Marino is upsetting people and he's getting it done, he would have a team on any Chris Jones's roster, because that's kind of what Chris Jones is. It's winning first, and if you're a good human being or not. And I've seen that clip of Marino this week, and people are trying to point out the differences in it. And I think that's where we go wrong. I think the worst thing you do right now is saying, yes, Marino is wrong here, Marino is wrong there. But in this instant, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think nothing sets this whole Marino argument back than trying to claim, well, he led up. This is an instant where he shouldn't be held accountable because of his reputation. It's like, yes, that's exactly what needs to be done, because even in that play, he's still attempting to cut corners. He's still attempting to intimidate that way. I don't think just the worst thing you can do if you're trying to get Marino out of the Canadian Football League is to see that hit. I don't care if it was malicious. It was intentional. He didn't attempt to hurt Zach Collaros or anything. but it was clearly intentional. It was clearly a lack of respect for the quarterback, the game, and it doesn't matter. And yes, he should be judged on his past. He should be judged on his character, not whether or not that play was, in that one was okay, but not compared to, but that's who he is. If you give him that excuse now, then it just validates him and gives him more reason to push the boundaries like that. And I don't care if it was a bad hit or a legal hit. It was intentionally stepping over the line again with the intent of intimidation. Because if you're Zach Collaros, you don't know if the next one's going to be real.
Yeah.
If he's there, it's intimidation. That's all it is.
You're talking about if you're winning, it doesn't matter if you're a good person.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to say something here. In the games that he's played 8 games this year. He was because he was suspended for 4 of them. 9 tackles and 1 sack. I don't know if those stats speak volume or are saying that we need to keep this guy.
Yeah.
There's nothing when I look at that, I'm thinking, well, this guy's a rotational guy. This guy probably is only there in the 4th quarter to clean up. No, this guy is a starter on their depth chart.
Yeah.
Like this, those kind of stats do not tell me that this guy, that you would miss him if you released him. You look at Duke Williams, $250,000 you're paying this guy. Now I realize at this point in time in the season, you kind of are like you're bent over because now if you release him, you're stuck paying him for the whole season. But you look at his stats, 8 games played because he's injured and he was suspended for one of them. 29 catches for 480 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's pretty. I'll say that's pretty decent. But when you're being paid $250,000, I'm sorry, I'm expecting double that. You should not be suspended. I'll give him the injury. That's something that you can't anticipate for management coaching like that. That's a shitty thing for me to say to bring that up, but you still have to be reliable, in my opinion. $250,000 a year, you got to be reliable, and he just hasn't been. It's like those stats that I've laid for this guy and Garrett Marino. I don't know if Saskatchewan would miss them. I honestly don't know. Marino, they would not miss him. Duke Williams, he's a deep threat. He's a good player. He's a good receiver. I don't know if they would miss a beat if they got Tevin Jones in there. Now they got Braden Lenius back. Like Shaq Evans, Kyrie Moore, Kyan Schaefer-Baker, Braden Lenius, Mitchell Picton, Tevin Jones. That's a formidable receiving core. It is. If they can find, their issue isn't lack of Duke Williams. Their issue is offensive linemen. If they can figure that out, this team is dangerous. And until they realize that that's the point, they're not going to be able to go any further. We are still waiting for Kevin Glenn to come on. So I apologize if you tuned in for Kevin Glenn. I apologize. We're just going to go on as further. Just go through. By the way, this is the last Sunday broadcast for this show. We are going to be going forward on Wednesdays, but we are going to be starting next Wednesday. I believe if I have the calendar correctly.
Yeah.
You have to look at the calendar. Yes. Wednesday the 14th. So not Wednesday the 7th, which is in 2 days. Wednesday the 14th will be our first. We're going to be hopefully going for 9 Central Standard Time to go with that one. Let's go with as we wait. Let's go through some games here, shall we? Let's go with Friday. Is Friday Night Football. The Montreal Alouettes host the BC Lions coming off their bye. Tony, where do you see this one going?
And I did believe I've heard that Vernon Adams Jr. is healthy. Is that correct? Have you heard the same information?
I haven't heard anything
trade?
to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think BC makes that trade. So I
Yeah.
would assume that
Yeah.
that Vernon Adams Jr. is full on healthy, ready to go.
Yeah. So I'd have to believe with Vernon Adams behind the wheel of that offense and a very dingy defense, it's hard for me to not. I won't say the BC Lions are back because I don't know what it's truly going to look like until we see Vernon Adams running that football team. But I do feel confident to say BC stable again. I don't know if that sounds right, but BC is stable again at the quarterback position. They've had a week off, and now hopefully you can start working that group the way it was under Nathan Rourke. If that does click, and Vernon Adams again has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, this is where Montreal is really going to find out that staying with Trevor Harris was the wrong move. I'm going to take BC, not in a blowout, just because BC is still going to be finding its way, and Vernon Adams trying to get familiar with the playbook. But 24-13 seems like a good number for me to pick for the opening of this weekend's games.
Yeah, this is I don't know where to go with this one. I honestly don't. Do I go with the Montreal Alouettes that won 2 games in a row, or do I go with the Montreal Alouettes that just shot themselves in the foot? It was just completely like it's just like this almost kind of speaks like the whole, remember the whole Henry Burris, good Hank, bad Hank, or Hank and Frank or what have you. Like I almost feel this is almost like Trevor Harris is kind of epitomizing that right now, but not like when Henry Burris was on, he was on.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Harris is not good. Like he's adequate. Like that's his good.
Yeah.
But then when he's bad, he's bad. Like he is like a rookie Trevor Harris almost.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, it's like, okay, you've had a bye weekend for BC. You've got a guy who's just learning the playbook. I don't know. Both teams made some significant moves. On the defensive side, does BC? I mean, I think defensively Montreal will be fine. They've got some new assets there. I want to take BC. I really do. But there's just something in my tummy that my gut that says take Montreal. I'm going to have to go with Montreal in this one. 23-22.
Interesting pick.
Now, as the line comes out, because I know it's Monday. We're on Labor Day Monday. I imagine that, I'm going to check to see if the lines come out soon. I imagine the lines for that show or for that game will be out tomorrow, if not Wednesday. And I anticipate BC probably be favored by 5.5 points, which is very tempting for me to take Montreal. Our first triple header of the year. And I got to say, I'm going to the Banjo Bowl as a viewer. I think this only happened once this year. As a viewer, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
As someone that's attending one of these games, I hate it. I live approximately 10-minute walk away from the stadium. So I'm not going to be missing that much, but I'm going to be missing at least a quarter of the Toronto Argonaut game in Ottawa, and I'm going to miss probably the first quarter of the Calgary Edmonton game. So I'm going to miss that. And that's the bad part. If you're attending this game, like if you're in Ottawa, Winnipeg, or Edmonton, you hate these triple headers.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Toronto, Saskatchewan, or Calgary fan, you're going to love it. Anyway, that's my point. Toronto Argonauts in Ottawa to play the Ottawa Red Blacks. This is like, are we on the Ottawa Red Black train, winning 2 games in a row against a team that I'm still not convinced? Like Toronto's got that above 500 record. I'm still not pro Toronto. Like a team that Toronto pretends to be should have ran Hamilton out of the water early.
Mm-hmm.
Like that game should not have been close. and they didn't. It wasn't until latter stages of the third, early fourth quarter that and that's normal because you're playing a rookie quarterback. Like that game should have been over. But I'm still not sold on Ottawa. I'm really not sold on Ottawa. Like, but at the same time, I think things are playing in Ottawa's favor. Toronto, as we talked about, like there are inconsistencies from week in and week out. If Toronto's going to say, "Hey, this is our good week," then it definitely is going to be their last week. I think Ottawa's going to win their first home game in quite some time. I think Ottawa is going to win this one. I'll say 25-20, Tony.
And when I was listening to the Toronto-Hamilton game today, I couldn't help but think to myself, is Bethel McLeod-Thompson good? And I don't mean that as in like, is he good? Does anyone know him? Like, is he good? You know how you can, wherever you put the inflection, it's like, is he good? Then you're just asking if Bethel McLeod's good. But it's like, is Bethel McLeod good? Is he actually a good quarterback? Like, I don't, like, he might actually be a good quarterback. Not a great quarterback, but it's like, maybe he's a good enough quarterback. Maybe he just is. And at the end of the day, you just need to beat the East and then worry about the West and the Grey Cup. So it's like, I think
they tried that last year and they got beat by Hamilton.
Pardon?
They tried that last year and they got beat by Hamilton in the Eastern Final.
I know, but it's like Hamilton's even worse now. Like at least Hamilton was somewhat good. And it's like, yeah, I think Toronto might legitimately be the best team in the East.
Oh, I think by far, yeah.
So then when I look at this football game, and now I've got a team that felt Jekyll and Hyde-ish in Toronto. I don't know what these guys are, what they from week to week. But now Ottawa's won 2 in a row. I'm like, well, that's not Ottawa. Like that, what are they building there? Like, which of these two teams you don't believe in do you believe in less? And I think I believe a little less in Ottawa, being at home or not. But again, this is one of those games where you just expect Toronto now to just puke up a huge opportunity to solidify their spot on the top. So part is like, well, obviously Toronto's got to blow it because this is one they shouldn't blow. But then Ottawa, I'm like, do I really pick them to step up? Are they a team that steps up? I don't think they are. So with all of this nonsensical babble, which is about the only way I can break down a Toronto-Ottawa game, is just babble my way through logic. I'm still going to take this Toronto Argonauts team that they might actually be okay. And I'm going to take them 28-13 over the Red Blacks.
Oh, okay. All right. So if I'm reading myself, if I'm paying attention, we're not on the same page for the first 2 games, are we? So
No.
You've got BC and Toronto. I've got Montreal. Although I will say it's my gut playing tricks on me for Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And Ottawa, it's me not being pro Toronto, and because they were good Toronto this week, I kind of expect Toronto to fall forward. It's more so I'm expecting bad Toronto next week. That little middle part of the triple header, the Banjo Bowl. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers host the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Where do you see this one going?
I see this one chugging along in favor of Winnipeg. Because, again, I just don't think – I mean, Calgary or Saskatchewan kind of did it again, and it seems to be a very ugly trend for them. They have a great first quarter. Look at Saskatchewan. They're legit. How about that Cody Fajardo? He is a great quarterback. We've got this. Oh, my gosh. Look at Saskatchewan beat. Look at Saskatchewan jump out against BC. Look at Saskatchewan jump out against Calgary. Look at them jump out against Winnipeg. And then the next 3 quarters is just this slow dissension into what's probably madness for Riders fans. As you watch it happening. Oh, here goes Saskatchewan now, the decline as the quarters happen to the inevitable loss. And and Winnipeg is just good. I just feel like you can critique them because everything's open to critique.
Yeah.
But it's not when you're for the same reason when we did our show last week, and I feel like I don't remember what I said last week, but it feels like the same speech. Saskatchewan is a sub 500 football club. They might be 500 now, sub 500 football club, probably by the end of the year. Okay, they're 500 club now. I feel like they're going to end as a below 500 football club. I don't think Cody Fajardo is actually the quarterback we claim he is or think he is or pretends he is. I don't think he is a big game quarterback. Could Saskatchewan win? Of course they can. That's why you play football games, and we just predict what we think is the most logical outcome. And to me, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, I think even if you gave Saskatchewan a good offensive line, they give Winnipeg a real run for their money, but they're still not at the same level as Winnipeg. And I think Winnipeg's just going to destroy them at home with that energy, being back after already having a win, a chance to sweep the home and home, where they say that the hardest thing to do is win back-to-back in the CFL. I don't think it's going to be for Winnipeg, and I think it's going to be with an exclamation mark, capping off the back-to-back weeks, 31-13.
I want to talk about something just quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Saskatchewan hasn't won a game at home since the Marino-Ottawa game. Like that seemed that happened so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they've only got two more home games for the rest of the season. Like that's just like it used to be that Mosaic was a loud, energetic stadium that was impossible to win, and they just can't seem to win there. But again, I digress. There's just something I just found kind of interesting, so to speak.
And
this game,
I've witnessed it. It's a loud, boisterous crowd at the beginning when it's going well, but it is very quick to tone them down. When things weren't going in the game I went to, I even think like before halftime, I think they were booing the right. Like I heard boos, and I even turned to Dave that I was with. I'm like, oh my gosh, are they booing him already? And Dave's like, yeah, I think they are. So they're not as, the leash has gotten a little bit shorter from the fans to the team this season, it would appear. Okay.
Okay. This game, and I kind of want to say, well, okay, well, if you can't beat a team at home, you don't stand a chance. But they do. Like they were close. Like that. Like I'm willing to admit that had it not been for the selfish penalties and the stupid asinine coaching decisions in Saskatchewan, like we're talking about a 10-2 Winnipeg Blue Bomber team as opposed to an 11-1 team. Like that like I don't know if you heard, like, I'm sorry. I just want to kind of like just steer this conversation away before we can go into the prediction. I don't know if you heard, Craig Dickinson challenged the offensive pass interference in the third quarter. His explanation, he knew that they were going to lose that challenge, but he had to show his team that he had their back. That was his explanation. Like, what kind of stupid reasoning is that? Oh, I'm just going to give up a freaking timeout because I want to show my team that I've got their back. Hey, it's a good thought in principle. You're trying to win a game, not win friends. Like that. Like this is stupid.
You know, it's funny you say that too, because it's like everybody in Canada wants you to kick a player off your team, and you won't. I think they figured out you have their back.
Yeah, that's a very good. That's a good piece right there. That's I'm going to start using that right there. Anyway, so you have all that, and I think Saskatchewan just gave everything to Winnipeg, and Winnipeg is slowly getting healthier. Brandon Alexander is practicing, Who knows if he's going to be available? Michael Couture is back practicing. Who knows if he's going to be available? Malcolm Thompson is practicing. Who knows if he's going to be available? Like, all these things are working out well for Winnipeg at the right time as far as injuries go. I don't think, regardless if they're playing, I don't think this is going to go into a slaughter as we think. Although something interesting is that when Winnipeg does win the Labor Day game, they do end up winning the Banjo Bulls, which is kind of cool because it was kind of interesting. They're 3-0 when they win the Labor Day game. They end up winning the Banjo Bowl, which shows you how many times that they've actually won the Labor Day game in Regina. But like, Saskatchewan threw everything they had at them, and they just kind of like just went backwards, like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. And you just don't. It's that kind of mentality that's just kind of like, okay, this team just has our number. And eventually, when Winnipeg does something good in their home, I think it's going to play a bigger factor. I think Saskatchewan can hold their own against the Bombers in Winnipeg, but there's just going to be that one moment in that game where Winnipeg's just going to be like, okay, we got this. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say Winnipeg wins this one. I'll say 28-18 in this one. The last game of the week, the last game of the triple header, the Calgary Stampeders return to Edmonton to face the Elks in this one. I don't know if we're going to expect the same Taylor Cornelius in this one. I think, you know what? I was not really too impressed Calgary defensively in this game. I'm going to predict an upset here. This is my upset of the week. And I'm going to stand on this no matter what the odds are. I think Edmonton covers the spread, and I think they're going to win. I think there's just a little bit of momentum there, and by saying that they're going to be upset the Stampeders, it's just not me saying that, oh, Edmonton is going to be on the clear path towards the playoffs. No, they're not a playoff team. But for this game only, because it's back-to-back, not impressed with Calgary defensively. I think the Edmonton will have enough offensive output to get past Calgary in this game. Edmonton to cover the spread. Edmonton to win 20-17, Tony.
Yeah, it definitely sets up. Unlike the Toronto one or the Winnipeg one, where I made it pretty clear that it was just going to be an easy back-to-back, and it doesn't mean much in this case. In this case, winning back-to-back with Calgary, Edmonton on this season, it's not. It's more in play here, only because you have Jake Maier, who's still trying to find his way. Now, I think Maier actually has the potential to be a very good quarterback.
Oh yeah,
in years for Calgary, but he needs to develop. Unlike Bo Levi Mitchells of the world, the Nathan Rourke's, who apparently just step in and they're great. The Ricky Rays, the Michael Rileys. Jake Maier is going to get there, but he's probably not going to get there this year. So he will have his up and down games. The thing is, when do you go back to Bo? Because you just don't bench Bo Levi Mitchell for the rest of the season. The year is not, Bo Levi Mitchell is not done. And I'm sorry, but when you have Bo Levi Mitchell, you just don't forget about him. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, Mayor's getting the job done. Let's just stay with him. Like, we have to see Bo Levi Mitchell play football games. To me, it would just blow my mind. Now, if Bo Levi Mitchell doesn't play another game for the Calgary Stampeders this year, it's because he got traded, and they've decided to move on from him.
And they're not going to trade him this year. They're like, I'm sorry to jump in. They are not going to trade any of their quarterbacks. Like, they are not Montreal. Like, in a year where quarterbacks are getting injured, you're not going to trade unless you're going to get an equal or better quarterback in return. And trust me, you are not going to get an equal or better quarterback in return for Bo Levi Mitchell.
Exactly. And the Calgary Stampeders aren't a Grey Cup favorite, and I think they are. They're not in the Grey Cup contention category, but they're more in the dark horse category. If a team could surprise and win, it's Calgary. I don't think they're contenders. They're more dark horses. And if you want to be a dark horse team to win, you're going to need 2 good quarterbacks and you back them up. So we have to see Bo Levi Mitchell play again. He just doesn't that's it. You screwed up 2 weeks ago, again 3 weeks ago against Toronto. We pulled you, and now you're a backup and you're never going to see the field again. And this might even be the game where we see Calgary go back to Bo Levi Mitchell because Jake Maier gets roughed up in the first quarter or the first half of the football game. It's definitely set up well to be a Elks win. But I do think Calgary has enough to fight back. And I think you probably see a slow start. And whether we see Bo Levi Mitchell come in or Jake Maier finish it, I think this one is a close football game again. And I like Calgary to win this one with a field goal with no time on the clock. 24-21, they win it.
I like the fact that we weren't on the same page for all 4 games. So only the Banjo Bowl we took the same team. But
I think I think it's a safe bet, but I think it is the correct bet personally.
So just to rehash, you've got BC, I've got Montreal, you've got Toronto, I've got Ottawa. We both have Winnipeg. You have the Stampeders, and I have the Edmonton Elks. And I'm guaranteeing that, we're going to hear about it on Twitter regarding these picks because that Montreal game is just giving me, just giving me heartburn right now because I'm just going back and forth. We didn't plan this, but because unfortunately we're not able to get a hold of Kevin Glenn, you may not have thought about it, but I have in case you didn't. But let's go to this segment here. And I realize that I haven't really properly set it up here. So just give me a quick second here before we go. And this is almost live. All right, let's all right, so we got that on the screen. All right, let's go.
Oh my God. Number 1. Seinfeld, you magnificent bastard.
Tony, who grabbed your attention, if any? Because if you didn't think about it, who grabbed your attention for this week's Magnificent Bastard?
I didn't get to see anyone. It was all radio, but it feels like, I don't know, I'm just getting this vibe. You're hoping I wouldn't have had one because you seem pretty giddy here.
I don't know. If you had one, you had one. I mean, that this is your segment, but it'd be, we're just kind of running on the fly here.
Yeah.
But I have to go with one individual.
Okay.
Because 2 weeks ago, his team was riding a 9-game winning streak, and this individual clanked one off the uprights to win the game, and he missed one to extend it in overtime. And this guy came back 2 weeks later with a nice little I don't know what dance move to avoid a punt block, and then he nailed a 55-yard field goal in Regina. Granted, it was with the wind, but it was a 55-yard field goal nonetheless, and it was the clinching points to edge the Winnipeg Blue Bombers past the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I know some people are going to say, oh my God, you're a homer for even going this. But honestly, how do you not? This was like a week where that kind of play just kind of stood out to me. So punter, kicker, Mark Leggio, you magnificent bastard.
Blocked.
And I put that on Twitter. Oh man, that punt! You never saw. You gotta watch the highlights on that one.
Yeah,
man. I put it on Twitter. I put.
Here's the thing, I up at 4:30 in the morning to get ready to work. Hour drive there. I work till 5. I work a 10-hour day. Work till 5, and then I drive another hour back to my hotel. So I have literally no life. If it's not on the radio and easy to access, I have no idea what's happening in the world right now of sports.
Well, it was just because if that punt gets blocked, I think that turns momentum in that game. And again, it's another thing, just one of those little things that didn't happen for Saskatchewan's way that did. And it's the little things. And sometimes if you're not paying attention to detail, that kind of stuff happens to teams like to Saskatchewan. Well, that'll do it for episode 450. If you tuned in for Kevin Glenn, I apologize. We'll definitely try to get him on because he was gung-ho. I'm unfortunately just not able to get a hold of him. And eventually we will work on it to get him back. And again, hopefully it'll be at an earlier time. What?
It was still a great 450, and it's been the greatest 450 episodes of anything I've ever done, Dults.
Yeah, definitely. Like when we started actually counting these episodes, like just to think, like we started counting probably what it was like just before episode 300. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And then that's like 150 episodes later, like 6 years later.
Yeah.
That's and up until this year, we were doing this podcast just like not looking at each other.
I know.
And it's like the evolution of our podcast.
Exactly. Actually, it would probably be pretty amazing to see where we started to where we got to now.
Yeah. As I said, this will do it for episode 450. You can follow us on Twitter at Rouge Radio. You can follow myself at Rouge Daltz, Tony at Tony Rouge. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rouge Radio. And of course, you could search for this as well as other video content on our YouTube page. Search for me on the TikTok at Robert Daltz. Tony, any final thoughts?
Yes, Kevin Glenn, you've made an enemy for life there.
Don't do that.
No, sorry.
Well, we definitely are going to have to work on that because he's probably like we've had big guests, like we've had Chris Cuthbert, Milt Stiegel, David Sanchez, Doug Brown, G. Roy Simon, but I feel that we would have hit the jackpot with Kevin Glenn.
Yeah, so much for the best insurance policy out there.
Oh, but yeah, just it's looking for it. And because we've got lots of emails from our listeners, so we definitely want to get this done because it was really interesting. I had some interesting questions to ask him, but I digress. We will do that at a different time. For Tony, I'm Daltz, and you know what? Before we do that, I'll get the actual the theme music to go. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just too busy talking about Kevin Glenn. And I don't even have a freaking dad joke to go on. So I apologize. I am really completely unprepared. For Tony, I'm Daltz. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.